South Carolina Native. Oh, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Rick is the South Carolina Native Plant Society State Advocacy Chair and our chapter's very own programs chair. And he is here to do a program for you all. He is much accomplished, involved, and recognized for his environmental work and advocacy. So this is going to be a long intro. He's the owner and founder of Earth Design Incorporated, which is a landscape architecture and environmental design firm that's dedicated to the principles of sustainability in the design of built environments. For over 35 years, Rick has been an advocate for land ethic values and education. He earned his graduate degree from UGA's School of Environmental Design and Landscape Architecture. In 1996, Rick founded Earth Design along with the formation of the South Carolina Native Plant Society. His mission was to create an awareness of our beautiful, unique, indigenous plants and demonstrate how good design can bring nature home to all of our communities and every backyard. He has served on many committees and currently serves on the Reedy River Quality Group for Best Management Practices and on the Conservation Coalition of South Carolina, along with all the work that he does for the South Carolina Native Plant Society. I don't know how you do it all, Rick. I honestly don't. He has won many awards, and I can only give you a fraction of them, but in 2003, he was awarded the Environmental Education of the Year Award. He worked with school districts, administrators, and teachers to utilize and integrate the environment into the teaching curriculum. He was one of the authors of Life at the Water's Edge, and this is a book that serves water quality and quantity issues by combining science and application. Life at the Water's Edge received the 2006 Natural Resource Publication of the Year Award. That's amazing. The Governor's Award, he also won the Governor's Award for Environmental Awareness that recognized his contribution to education and the environment. In 2010, he received Upstate Forever's Volunteer of the Year Award. Additionally, he has won the Award of Excellence from the American Society of Landscape Architects for the Water Trails Master Plan, the subject of tonight's talk. And with that, I give you Rick Huffman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. That was wonderful.
Absolutely.
Can everybody hear me okay? And
yeah, Rick, can I make a comment before you get started?
Sure.
In order to enhance everybody's viewing of this presentation, if you go up to the right-hand side, upper right-hand, click View and say Speaker, then that would reduce the amount of people that you see. You'll just see Rick talking. And also, if you have any chat, if you want to use the chat box for your questions, I'll relay that on to Rick at the end of the program, all the questions that you use using the chat box. So I'll be monitoring that. Thank you, Rick. Go ahead.
okay, share screen.
Yep.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Good. So thank you, Kate, for the introduction. That was wonderful. Sometime when somebody's reading that stuff, all that stuff off, I kind of look around and see who's behind me, make sure they're talking about me. The one thing I've always said about recognition and awards is you can get recognition and awards for a lot of different things, including eating hot dogs. But it is quite an honor to work for conservation and be dedicated to it. And it's been, I guess, my lifelong work to do this. And the Native Plant Society has been the catalyst really for a lot of what I do and what I'm about. And so it's a great honor to serve this organization and present tonight one of the, I think, the crowning achievement of my career. So after you do something like this, is what do you do next? And I'm going to give you a small snippet, even though there's a lot of tonight, about what this project entails. And so we made history in this project. And again, I'm just so honored to share this with you folks. And so I hope you'll find as much enjoyment out of it as I have and putting this project together with my team at Earth Design.
Rick, we're not hearing any audio on this.
Okay, so that video kind of sets the tone of what we're going to be talking about tonight. I think it's kind of a good starter point for what we're going to be talking about. The Black River State Park and River Trails Master Plan was a process and a vision. And so folks have worked on this project since the early mid 2000s, in 2003 and 2004, when this section of the river was designated as scenic by the state, and DNR was put in charge of coming up with study and a plan for it. And back in that time, 2004, I served on the Heritage Trust Advisory Committee and for DNR. And so several of the botanists and other people, we went over there and spent 2 weeks over there surveying this river back in the 2000s. So I had a connection with this river that goes way back, and so you can see a little bit my connection to this river, and it's always been near and dear to my heart, just like all the rivers have been in the state. And so our process and vision began with a response to the RFP, and we were the smallest firm to submit on this. And so we began with information gathering, programming, community engagement. We developed tools and one-of-a-kind tools such as mapping and GIS software, aerial flights. We flew over it 3 times. We inventoried and assessed the plant communities and the river. And we had charrettes and preliminary designs. And most importantly, we engaged with the community to ask them what they wanted and how they wanted to see this river come about. This is our team that we put together, Earth Design put together. You can see our leadership team of Earth Design, myself, Michael Etheridge, and Holly Owens were part of our team. Greg Galdin Davis, Arnett Muldrow was our community engagement team. And then lastly, ADC was our engineers that helped us. Were on our boat landings and that type of thing to make sure that we're engineering these things for the public in a safe manner. So again, the project becomes about, you can see the graphic on the left. This is what our proposal looked like. And one of the reasons that we got selected for this project was, again, my connection to the river, but more importantly about process and approach. We felt like our process and approach was sound, based in good science, and ecology, but also bringing the skills of a landscape architect to the forefront on this, and our knowledge of plant communities and rivers was out in the front. Again, you can see on the right there, from site analysis to land use plan, all these were part of our effort there, including the charrette, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and how we went through that design process. So this is part of our proposal. To take on a project of this scope and scale, you're talking 70 miles of river, 2 to 3 miles on either side of the river was total wilderness. And you had 45 miles of this river with no public access. So of the 70 miles, almost half of it was set 45 miles between landing spots. So we felt like this color wheel that we put together was really central to pulling off a project of this size. And so if you look at this wheel, you see the inner circle is the months that carried us throughout this project. And then you can see the next wheel in with the colors of green and purple and blue. As you can see on the left, what they outline is kickoff meetings, steering committee meetings, deliverables all along the way throughout this process. And then the other wheels that you see is the information gathering, community engagement, and then design charrettes, and then lastly, design and documentation. So starting out with a sound methodology here and a process really allowed us to really do this park justice. And I would say one of the challenges for this, I felt personally, was for 20 years, people have been planning for this to happen. You had a steering committee and a whole host of people been involved with it for years and years. And we felt the weight of that, in that we needed to do that steering committee and all those people who came before us justice. And we also needed to speak for the river and do the river justice. And so I think that's what we have achieved. So if you look at the state park, you look at the state where all the state parks are in South Carolina, and you look at where the red graphic there, that's where you see a big hole in our state where we don't have any state parks. So the need for having a state park here to service that area of our state was kind of really front and center. So, again, so you had more than 80,000 acres of protected land stretched from Blue Ridge Mountain to the Sandhills in state parks. But again, this was a big hole in the state. And so we wanted to take this mission on and tell the story of the state park and of the river itself. So I think this was a part of our goals. And so if you look at this map right here, you can see, like I mentioned in the video, our area was from King Street, all the way down to Rocky Point in Georgetown, which is about, and you will show you that graphically a little bit clearer in just a minute. But again, you can see the length of that river, 70 miles is a long way on a river. And so again, and all the green you see in this graphic here was all the protected lands and acquired lands along that way. And so this is where we started to work from. So again, the South Carolina Black River Water Trail Network Plan was first new state park in 15 years. So again, part of our challenges were equity and inclusion. to access and increase recreation opportunities, protection and interpretation of our cultural history, and this was huge, and we're still developing this interpretation of the cultural history, the conservation of the natural resources and the water itself, for preservation of ecosystems for resiliency, rural economic development, and enhanced byways and greenways. And again, Kingstree and Andrews, the city of Kingstree and Andrews are the towns along the riverway. And so we're still working with the city of Andrews and Kingstree to develop new plans for those towns so that they can connect better with the river. And so you look at 8,000 acres protected lands from development, 70 miles of river, 23 public access points, 4 county parks, and 1 state park. And so again, these are all the partners that we work with. Here you can see on the right, you can see the Black River State Park Master Plan Steering Committee. And you can see all the organizations that they represent, including the National Park Service, the National DNR, Town of Andrews, and some we've mentioned before. The Scenic Black River Advisory Council was really front and center, and we couldn't have done it without Louis Drucker. And we'll show Louis in just a minute. But again, all these people and all these organizations and partners were front and center to helping us pull this project off. The teamwork and collaboration that was built over doing this project is still with us today. And again, Earth Design was well supported by all these different organizations and continues to be as this project begins to move forward. So, so again, this Black River is about, this slide is about what do we see emerge and what is the emerging opportunities that we see from our efforts on this river. And it really boils down to resilience and recreation and how we can, again, tell the story of this river and of its people to the public and for future generations. And so we wanted to look at this from what we call ecosystem services and human well-being. And so we look at this from, again, the economic opportunity for the city of Andrews and city of Kingstree, Georgetown County as well. We wanted to address flood prevention and flood control through the river and understanding how this river works and how it operates. We had to really understand this river and how it works and how it operates. You almost got 2 different river systems in this one stretch. And then, of course, equitable access. And as our surveys, we'll talk about that in a minute, it was access. But it was all a lot of other things as well. And so what emerged for us in our dive into our analysis and inventory of the river was wildlife and unspoiled beauty. I don't think you can go anywhere in the world and have an experience like what you have on the Black River, from fishing to the swallowtail kites. I saw my first swallowtail kite when I was down there, and it was tearful. I was really emotional seeing my first swallowtail kite. And the nest of the swallowtail kite was directly over my head where I was staying at on the Bingo Creek. And from the box turtles to the wood storks, I found myself in one of my kayaking trips. I was in the middle of a rookery of the white storks, and they were directly over my head, and the river was 8 foot above flood stage. And so there I was by myself with just these birds and these wonderful trees. It was kind of magic. So, but again, it's the story that needs to be told. It's about wildlife habitat, scenic view sheds such as the Pig Tree photo you see up there. That is one of the icons of the river. And of course, recreation and the cultural sites. And through our investigation and analysis, the culture from African Americans to the Native Americans, to the Revolutionary War, to the Civil War, all of our nation's history can really be connected to this river. And so part of our job was to bring all that together, summarize it, and put it in context so that we could, again, through our take part, tell the story. It was about relationship building and participatory education. So again, the whole community from top to bottom of this river has graciously embraced this effort. They've celebrated this effort, and a lot of these people have never been on this river before. And so getting these people out there on the river for the very first time, that they had lived on this river and they'd been around this river, but they had never been on the river. And so again, part of our job was to embrace and rebuild these relationships and participatory education. And for me, for the others who know me, this is what I like doing, is bringing education to the forefront and telling that story. One of our big partners that supported us all the way through this project was the Black River Cypress Preserve, and some known as the Butler Cypress Preserve. And so the hospitality that we were shown here was tremendous. This is where we stayed. This is where our ground zero for us. And you can see from this map what the property that they're on, and they're restoring Lonely Pine. They have McBridia, Alba on the site. And so then the heart, and this is what I call the sweet spot, or the Goldilocks zone, for the entire 70-mile stretch was right here. And this is at 41 Bridge along the route there. And we'll show you a little bit more of this when we get to the maps. But again, the Butler Cypress Reserve served as a model for how we want to build the park and what we want this park to look like. And so again, it's great when you already have an intact model for what the state park could be or should be and what it should look like. So again, big thanks to the Butler Cypress Preserve, Black River Cypress Preserve, for their hospitality and shining the way for what's possible. And again, and bringing the community and the state together, to make this happen. So here you can see the mayor, Mayor McClary on the right, and Senator Sams in the middle, and of course, our Governor McMaster there, and others there that, again, all have embraced this and have supported it, because you cannot come in contact with this river and not be touched by the magic of this place. And again, so I think our initiative has been landed well received, and I think it will happen. So again, part of our task was to do community engagement. And so Arnett Muldrow, our team partners here with Earth Design, was exemplary in their ability to bring the community voice out, how we capture that community voice and give credence and justice to the voices that we heard and to what they want with this river. I thought the video summed it up really well. We want to know what they wanted out of this river, not what we wanted, but what the community wanted out of this river, and how we can serve that need, both in the short and the long term. Because part of our task is not only to do the park, but also provide a guidance for land use going forward for the whole entire corridor. And so capturing this community voice, part of that was capturing the Native Americans' story here. And we're still doing that. And we're still doing that. In all of our interviews with the Native American tribes, none of them could tell me really much about, no one tribe claimed the river. They all kind of used the river, but no one tribe said, this is our territory or so. So when you see this map, you can see where the PDs were, the Chorals were, the Waterees, the Wakamas, Jacoras. But look in the Black River, you get the Lumbee there. But again, all this overlap. And again, and so we were able to piece together the archaeological history here to some error points that someone's shared with us, timelines that we looked at there back to 11,000 years ago. And so really a cool way of interacting with the Native American tribes and the Native Plant Society. We're getting ready to engage these Native American tribes head on here. And so here you can see the tribal folks that we brought out. We met them multiple times over, and we still are. As a matter of fact, I'll be meeting with them on Friday to talk more about how we can interact with them. So the indigenous people were part of this river. They're part of this story. Sadly, by 1750, they were gone. And so again, the story to be told here is that story as well. And so whose voice are we asking for? We're looking, you see a breakdown here. We looked at the gender, we looked at the age gap, we looked at race and ethnicity. So here we wanted to capture as many diverse group of voices as we could, age groups, et cetera, who responds to this. And you can see the age breakouts there. And so, and then also we had community engagement, in-person community engagement meetings. We had 3. And so all those were well attended, and we heard front and center what folks wanted. And we also heard what they didn't want. And, and a lot of people, some people didn't want a state park there. And so we look at this, we can see what the river landowner response was. We had 58% supportive, but 41% had concerns. And I remember one of the landowners there, we were in the community meeting, and he was voicing his very strong concerns, and I offered some words there, and I said, what can we do to make you feel better about this? And he said, just leave. And so I said, well, that's not good. We're here to help. So, but you can see, the percentages across the board, people that agree or disagree. And so accumulating this right here is really important. And so one of the things that we heard loud and clear, one of the top priorities was, along with access, was trash. Throwing trash in the river. And with more people coming to the river, the more opportunities for trash. But the counter to that is you got more like-minded people that care about the river. That's the reason they're coming to the river. Those people, are more likely to help take care of it. But trash in any river that we have in the state is an issue. But we heard it loud and clear. So we tried to design a park that we could, and the state parks are very good at managing their parks to keep them clean. So what we heard was small boat access, camping, wildlife program, wildlife viewing, fishing, boating, biking, canoes and kayak trails, riverbank fishing, piers and docks, hiking trails, picnic. So all of these are things that we heard in some manner, shape, or form. And so again, this was our program basically was defined by these community engagements. So here you can see some of the comments that we received. Public access, it's a cultural and historical touchstone. Landowners will be the ones to have to deal with the problems. I wanted to share these with you because when you take on a project like this, it's a public project. It's a wilderness area. It's pretty much pristine in a lot of ways. We wanted to do it justice. And so we needed to hear the good, the bad, and the concerns. And so as our task was to execute this master plan, this is part of the process. And so part of our design process was to conduct a charrette, and we used Clemson University Landscape Architect Program. National Park Service was helped put this together along with the American Society of Landscape Architects. And you can see our team of consultants along the bottom. And so this was a 2-day charrette. One day we took the students out and showed them the areas. We shared all of our maps. We shared all of our topo, et cetera, our forest resources that we had gathered. And we engaged with these landscape architect students. And we put up concepts you can see on the board there and put the bones of it together. And then Earth Design took these concepts and whipped them into shape, I guess, into concrete plans. And so that's kind of our process. But I would say that, the calling of the river is something that I don't think we fully comprehended until we get, except for maybe myself, till we got there. Once you get on that river, you can feel the voice of that river calling you. And it was certainly calling me. One of the former directors of DNR, Barry Beasley, a river guy, he called me up about this project and he said, Rick, this river's calling your name. And I felt that river calling me. And so in this slide, you see myself and one of our project manager, Michael Etheridge. And then the guys in the boat are Lewis Drucker on the right and John there on the left. And John worked for the Butler Cypress Preserve and provided all the boats that took us up and down the river as we needed. So, so here's our target tracks. You can, I want to share this with you so you can see up the top. You got Kingstree up here at the top. Andrews is down here in the more or less the lower middle. And what you can see with the color graphics in here, you can see the public areas and acreage there. You see the private land holdings in this target area. And then you can see the target parcels that we have here. And so Hines Canada is located at 41 Bridge, and we'll talk about Hines Canada a bit. RMS tract was here, and the Meade tract was here. And then way down here was Rocky Point, which is in Georgetown County. And that was a historically Black park that there. There was, and for the county took it back over. So the African Americans, that was their park down in Georgetown. And so, so these are our target tracks. We also, we had, the way we did all this was ArcView GIS capabilities. So we really designed all this from our phones. I had all this software on my phone, and I could tell where I was at in real time, what I was looking at. I could photograph, I could video, I could make notes about what I was seeing where. So we inventoried the whole 70 miles, both tributaries as well as the river, and we put it all documented it. And so these are the things that we come as markers on the river here: impact from development, conservation opportunities, and also it helped us kind of fulfill our vision for the land use and how that land was going to be protected for there. So, and this note to this side, there's 22 to 23,000 acres remaining that could be potentially placed in perpetual conservation. And trust me, that work is ongoing as we speak. So, so this slide shows you about a little bit about the access on the river. So up at the top where you have Kingstree, up here, you know, again, all the way down to Bryn Urban Park landing, that's 45 miles with no public access. And so you can see where the black is the existing landings, and the green areas are the kayak launches, and where we knew that we needed to have launches there to help break this river up so that we could have paddles that could be varied between a half-day paddle to a full-day paddle to multiple day paddles. And so we broke it down into mileages. And so you see there, we can do between 7 and 10 miles in a half a day, between 16 and 20 miles in a full day. So again, that varies between river conditions. So here you can see what a full day access paddle might look like. About 16 miles, averaging 2 miles per hour. So the first section, we call this King Street down to Sims Reach. The Sims Reach tract was not open for purchase. I interacted with the landowner right there at Sims Reach, convinced him that he needed to sell us 50 acres and so we could have a landing launch there. And he agreed to that because I could help him identify all the plants on his property. So it was kind of a way of going through the back door to get to the front door. But from Sims Reach, number 2 is from Sims Reach to P House. That's another 21 miles. It's hard to get your mind around the scale of this project. And so then from P House down to Lieberman, which is 2 to 3. And so from 2 to 3, the river really opens up into a big, wide river. The upper part from 1 and 2 is a very narrow river. And sometimes it's often clogged with trees and snags, et cetera. It's got a lot of meander to it. Whereas you get down below 2.5 to 3 section there, particularly below 41 Bridge, it begins to open up into a big, wide river. And so up in here, you can see where number 4 is. You can see the Mingo Creek there, tributary, which is huge, as any river we have in the upstate. So again, just another idea, seeing where these kayak launches play out. So part of this was understand this river as a flood zone, and this river floods each and every year. Some years more than others. And so understanding the dynamics of the upper part of the river versus the lower part of the river, where the flood zones are, and flood zone A versus flood zone A and E, so understanding this helps us determine about what to put where and what kind of conditions we're going to be designing for, so that we make sure that we design kayak launches in areas that can be flexible for flooding, et cetera. We can use off-river platforms and camping and that type of thing. We can put these things in an elevation so that they can stand the test of time and make safety first. And so, so part of this understanding the flood zone is again breaking this map down through the ArcView GIS capabilities that we had. We could look at things like soils, and so we really designed this park around soils and wetland analysis. So you got to know where the dry ground and high ground is, where you know where to put things. Also, the soils tell us what types of vegetation land where. So the soils can tell us where longleaf pine was probably prevalent or need to be restored or still existing, or where the bottomland hardwood forest are, where the cypress gum areas are. You can base all that analysis for those plant communities based upon these soils and wetland analysis. And so this told us where preferred areas were, where average were. And so this formed a lot of our decision making as we began to piece this thing together. And so again, this is one of our tracks. We call this in our it's called Hines Canada track, and this is where all of our North American history can be connected, right here at Hines Canada. This is at the Lower Bridge, 377 Bridge. This is where the Civil War. This is where the Revolutionary War was fought and won. This is where the Civil War was fought and won. This is just above there was Kingstree, where Kingstree was the first settlement on the river, a European settlement on the river. So all this track right here connects all the human history, but more importantly, in our analysis, this is where the limestone bottom is in the river. The reason this was so historical site is because of the limestone bottom in the river made it a good place to cross the river 10,000 years ago. It's still a good place to cross the river today, as well as during the Revolutionary War. Francis Marion defeated the British because he knew where the limestone was. And again, when we did the work there, I ran up on an amateur archaeologist that had collected 50 or so points, and he had dated them back to 11,000 years ago and identified the tribes which had visited there. And he found all those points, most all the points were Hines Canada. So this was an important track for us. And when you look at these markers on this map here, you can see how we made this. All those white dots and all those green dots on that map are places where we did it we logged in with our phone, we documented what we were seeing there, and you can see some of our notes on this, where you can see up the top, deep hole with rock bank, high sides. And again, the banks were very high. So you had high calcium, high magnesium bluffs along this river, which means you had rare plant communities and rare plants along these bluffs and these levees. So the river forms, the land forms along the river, such as slows, yazoo streams, oxbows, all those things were prevalent here. And you can see how wet this site is. So this site was super wet. And as one of the state park purchases of this tract in hand, what could you put here that's going to be able to be flooded 80% of the time? So our next site down the river here, not very far from Hines Canada. Again, and you get the little bit of tailings of this limestone bottom in here, but not much. But you did have some high calcium bluffs in here. And so again, you can see all these white dots tell you the points we made on the ground or on the river. So we documented what we were seeing. That pig tree I showed you, the slide of, there it is right there, the dot where we documented that, where that was at. So again, this ability that we have with our phones, document what we were seeing in real time and put it on maps, help tell the story of the river. All the purple lines that you see was all the high ground. So we knew that was the higher ground where you actually, could put things. And so that helped us inform us of our decisions going forward about where the building sites were. And so the next track that we looked at downriver was the Mead track. And notice on this slide, you see the markers, 20, 26, 27, 28. Those are mile markers. So again, put you in context and scale for the area that we're talking about. So you can see the Mead Westvaco site up above there on 27. But this Mead track was probably one of the most beautiful sites I've ever seen anywhere. And so river, high banks, high bluffs, with high calcium soils, magnesium, river cane out, it was just beautiful. The ducks flying up and down the river, the swallowtail kites over our head. Again, this was a beautiful tract of land. And you can see how we made our notes here to tell us what we were seeing there in real time and how we can best utilize this landscape to serve the park and the people. And so what it informed us of all this analysis that we did, and I think the analysis is really critical to cover all that, what we can see where we can put the visitor center and what that visitor center might look like. And how we look at it in context with the entire park. We also looked at access kayak launches and what type of kayak launches we want to put where. And based upon the bends of the river or the way the river floods in a particular area, high bluff, low bluffs, it helped us again to determine what type of access to put where, and for small boats and kayaks, etc. There's not much need on this river for boat launches because most of those lower part of the river, but in the upper part of the river, these are the top launches that are probably most accessible. And so also cabins, bathrooms, and shelters. Again, we had a great model there with the Butler Cypress Preserve. We looked at hundreds of parks across the region and area to gain ideas and input, inspiration for what other people had done, so that we've given this park its due and in context with its surroundings. We also looked at RV and tent campgrounds. Again, looking at models, how we can do these types of inclusions as far as people to come and visit, but how to do it in a sustainable way that doesn't degrade the natural resources was front and center and key to our efforts. Tree houses and camp platform. I love this part. And this is where the, I guess, river hits the road, I guess. In designing these camping platforms and off-river excursions so that people can have that real river experience in these tree houses and camping platforms. And they will be multiple of these sites up and down the river. And again, this is where, using models that we had looked at from previous other sites, we gained a lot of insight to this on how to build these sustainably. Fishing is a big part of this river. And so how do we design and where do we design fishing opportunities for the handicap? So we've all been inclusive in this. We wanted to make sure that we were inclusive to all age groups and community folks there. Again, all this goes into the hopper of what we do and how we designed it. Circulations and boardwalks. When you're walking through wet areas, the best way to do it is to get people up off the wet area and put them on boardwalks. So you're not degrading the resource by having people interact with it. And this is the safest way to doing it. It's the least harmful of an environment, and it allows you to protect this. I did some work back 15, 18 years ago in the Congaree National Swamp, National Monument, and where these boardwalks were prevalent, and other parks Arabia Mountain in Georgia where I worked on. And boardwalks has always been a good tool to get people up and off the surface to not degrade the environment. Hiking and biking trails. And again, there's already a lot of networking going on with biking trails from Georgetown and coming up. And we've been working with other landscape design teams to make sure we're all singing from the same playbook and we're being unified in what we're doing. Again, the surface of these trails are really important. So again, you construct them so that they don't degrade the resource. Wayfinding, education, playground, and most importantly, trash. How we help mitigate and minimize trash was first and foremost, everybody's mind, how we do that, how we do it constructively. Again, National Park Service has good guidelines on that. Signage and wayfinding is real important. And again, we want to make sure that we provide the best of that. And also using current technology like QR codes and other things that we can utilize here to make wayfinding and education foremost in part of the park. Reforestation is a big part of what we looked at. Again, the soils maps help tell us a lot about what goes where. From longleaf pine restoration, you can see the smoke there from that burning. And you can see again, a new longleaf pine area recovering there on the far upper right-hand corner. So again, a lot of this was going on at the Butler Cypress Preserve as we were there. And, but again, we identified areas in the plan where these things should and could occur. And some of the cool indigenous plants that we found there is McBridia, which is the plant on the blue plant on the left. The American chaffseed, which is in the middle there, and then the Pinus glabra, which is the king's tree. This is the what king's tree got its name out of for Pinus glabra, which was the used these big tall trees like this for the mast of the king's ships. So the Black River Water Trails and Park Network. So I love the smoky look to it. But again, this is what we came up with. So this is our regional vision, Blackwater Trail and Park. So this is what we put together of all the analysis, all the meetings, everything came together. And so where we put these things. So you can see in the upper left here, you can see where our Hines Canada track was. Unit 2 is the show I showed you just a minute ago. Unit 3 is right here at the Meade track. This all here is the Butler Cypress Preserve at 41 Bridge and all the way down to Rocky Point, and then the new acquisition that was called Ramsey Grove. And this came in as we were working on the project. And there are more projects and more acquisitions are coming along the way. But this is kind of a big overview of look as far as how these parks are scattered along the river. So again, we've shown you a little bit about Hines Canada. So this is the master plan, Unit 1, we call it. I wasn't real excited about calling it Unit 1, but that's what the park wanted. And so here's Unit 1 with Hines Canada. And again, remember, this is where the limestone bottom is in the river. This is where all the history happened right here. So this being so wet, 80% of it floods, you know. So what we decided to do here was make this a kayak visitor outfitter central. So we would, the Stark State Park would invite outfitters to reside here, and they could pull these people up and down. People come and rent kayaks, you know, and experience this up and down the river. So it's a major put in and put out area, mostly. Not many facilities there. There will be some facilities up on the upper end of it, but mostly for maintenance and for the state park, and some little bit of RV at the top where it's drier, but mostly it's mostly for servicing the community as far as outfitters. The RMS track, or Unit 2, is where most of the state park is going to go right here. And so you can see the network of trails and roads that we put in here, where the visitor center will be. And then you'll see the graphics down at the bottom, you know, the visitor center, the walking trails, horseback riding, all those activities will be, but mainly focused here. Is also a huge area where we can do longleaf pine restoration here. And this is one of the most beautiful and most scenic stretches of the river that we encountered. And so, and again, I showed you the dots that we put on the map previously. So RMS, our Unit 2 track, was absolutely beautiful. And I think we did a really nice job of putting all this together. And the last track we already mentioned earlier was Unit 3. This is the Meade track. And again, where the river bends sharply down here at the bottom was just absolutely beautiful. River cane all along the bluff here. And so again, this area does flood a lot, but the upper area has a lot of buildable area for RV camping. This will be mainly used for RV camping, cabins, and those type of things with some platforms. But again, this is again just another specialty kind of a park based on what how we read the landscape and put the right things in the right places. And then lastly, the Rocky Point Community Forest. This is again historically an African American park here, and now is owned by Georgetown County. And so it's not part of state parks, but it's part of our design program. And again, this has been a park for a long time. And what we saw in here was some historical archaeological places in here, some burial sites. The Choppy Creek that feeds into this was really prominent place to have beginner kayakers could kind of get their feet wet a little bit in Choppy Creek before they take on the bigger river. You can see how big and wide the river is here. But this offered a lot of for camping, recreational type things in here. They got a lake in it. Longleaf pine restoration is going to could be really had here. There's a lot of pine forest on here already. And we think this is going to be another gem along that trail. So these are some of the graphics that we put together to show you what this park is going to look like. And I've worked on a lot of projects, but I don't think I've ever seen, and not to say it's the wrong way, but the graphics and the renderings that we put forth here are absolutely exquisite. And they tell the story of what this is going to look like and what we envision for this. This is the envisioning of it, of what we see happening from the visitor center to the picnic shelters to the paddle launches and cabins, and how we participate the interaction of this river. So here again, and you can see again close up of the graphics here, how we envision this, people interacting with the river, ongoing. And again, the graphics are exceptionally done. And I think they really do a great job of summarizing and telling the story. And so look at this. I mean, that's just really visual. And so just every shadow, every line on this from a rendering standpoint, our team worked together on this to produce this. And again, I was very, very proud of it. And so it served the community very, very, very well. And so lastly, our call was to produce a report with all the drawings and things in it that captured our introduction, our inventory analysis, our public engagement, and the charrette down to the final product. And so this booklet is out, and it's been sent to the state, and it's been very well received. And what's really kind of telling in this booklet is this is where we get to tell the story. The Native Americans, the historical context of them, the African American community, the European settlement, and how that played out, and the history all behind this Black River. Because again, in the 1800s, before 1850, the economic engine for the whole entire state was the Black River, not Charleston. And but after 1850, when the railroad came in, this became the less of the economic engine for the entire state. But so what happens to the steering committee? Well, the steering committee is still working and still active. We're still engaging with them on certain things. The town of Andrews is engaged with a master plan envisioning project, and Earth Design, our company, has been hired to help the town of Andrews with this master plan envisioning and economic development there. We're also working with Williamsburg County on the economic development plan, and that's ongoing through OSI, our bosses on this project, and we're still having discussions about that ongoing. The archaeological investigation, I just got off a call here before we got on here about the archaeological investigation on these parcels and what they're discovering and what they're finding. So that is ongoing as we speak. The state park funding and planning and building is underway. The state parks is doing their job and doing their what we call due diligence, making sure that we know where things are and what we put in certain places are going to work, following our master plan. And then lastly, we're continuing to figure out, all many nuances of the wayfinding, river trails, et cetera, as we make this go forward.
South Carolina rivers have always been the keepers of life. Their existing protected lands with brand new state and local parks. Your pattern, hiking, online, and experts.
So let's build this park. That's my final message. Let's build this park. So, and just lastly, I want to share the award, a photograph of the award that we received about a month ago as the award of excellence from the American Society of Landscape Architects for this project. And so, so I want to share that with you. So, but anyway, so that's the program for this. And so I'm happy to stop share and take questions.
Yeah, Rick, we had a one question on chat is talking about the report. Is it online for the general public?
It should be online. You probably can view that either on state parks. The Shakawana State Parks should have it, or the Open Space Institute. And if somebody can't find it, they can certainly email me and I can see if I can get it to them. But it is available to the public now. For a long while, we couldn't talk about it. Got to keep it secret. And so for a year, I was working on this project. I couldn't say a whole lot about it. But it is out there available. Also, the Post and Courier. There's a storyboard on the Post and Courier that you can visit the Post and Courier and get the storyboard on that. So there's lots of publications about this. You can just Google it and you'll pull up a lot of different things about that. So yeah, they can find that.
Well, I want to add that back in May, late May, a friend of mine and I paddled the Black River based upon your recommendation. And we found it to be a wonderful wilderness experience. This guy and I have paddled from Canada to the Everglades on different rivers. And he keeps telling me over and over that the Black River was his favorite trip he's ever been on.
Great. Thank you, Dan. It is. It is truly a hidden treasure in South Carolina or in the world, really. And so again, we just feel called and honored to do justice.
There's a question saying, are there alligators? She saw children swimming, and she's wondering if there are alligators on that river.
Oh, there are gators on there. We saw a couple. And somebody asked me, yeah, they are gators on there. So we saw a couple. They're mostly in the lower section and not much in the upper section. So I am down in the Mingo Creek area. And again, you almost got two rivers. You got a lower river and you got an upper river. And they're almost like night and day. I mean, one's real narrow and curvy and winding, and the other's real broad and wide.
Yeah, my take on that is that the alligators are widely hunted in that on the Black River, and that I got a glimpse of one, and the guy behind me paddling with me never saw it. It was in the water as soon as we rounded in. That was the only one we saw on 4 days of paddling.
Right. That's right.
And I also saw my first swallowtail kite on that river.
Yeah.
I know how you feel.
Yeah, that was special. Yeah, you know, and we stayed at the Butler Cypress Preserve, but Mariah Whitehead, our boss, her family had a cabin, 150-year-old cabin on Mingo Creek. So I got to spend like 3 nights by myself on Mingo Creek. And I can't tell you, all the eagles, swallowtail kites, loons, it was just, you know, I just felt, you know, so touched and grateful to be there. And so it was quite an experience. So
And we met a caretaker there at one of the Butler Preserve properties, and just listening to him talk was a real experience. You know, that low country accent, man, I was just eating that up.
yeah. So in that last video, Mr. Lewis Drucker is a retired dentist, and what he does, he takes people up and down the river. Like anytime anybody wants to go, no matter who you are, you hang out with Lewis and he'll take you. And he knows that river like the back of his hand. And so he's, you know, he spent his whole life on that river. And so it's really special. And the odd thing was Lewis took us up the first time in the boat, got out of the boat, and he says, and I could tell something was wrong with him. And I said, "What's up, Mr. Drucker?" He said, "Well, Mr. Huffman, I've been on this river for 40 years. And he said, you know, I get off the river, and he said, you was pointing out things I'd paddled by my whole life and didn't know what they were. And he says, I feel a little bit like, you know, I need to go back to school on this river. So we connected very nicely, and we're still great friends. Matter of fact, I talked to him last week, and he's so everybody's really excited about this plan, the quality of the plan, and the thoroughness that we felt like our team brought to it. And so I felt like they could have, you know, so he's a great asset for that river, and he's a great champion for it. And just like anywhere else, like Joe Cassidy, you know, whatever, you have to have champions for something. And Lewis Drucker is certainly a champion for the Black River. And so we couldn't have done it without Lewis Drucker. And so we owe a lot of great gratitude to Lewis.
Are there any more questions from anybody? If you want to unmute yourself or hit the space bar and voice your question.
What's the timeline for the development of the park?
Great question. So the timeline is a little bit, I think you're looking at least a couple of years. One has got to be funded, and the funding looks like we're going to need about $46 million to fund it. You know, so, and again, there are still lands being acquired, but I'm thinking you're looking at 2 years before they've actually, you know, actually a visitor center or this type of thing, or some of these kayak launches may be built prior to that. But I think you're looking at about a couple of years minimum before these things really hit the ground running on it. So that's the timeline I've gotten from state parks, that they're hoping to have, you know, this thing officially, quote unquote, open in 2 years. And so again, funding pending. The state has the plan. The governor has the plan. You saw all those people in that slide. You know, we was at a meeting with the Green Tie event back in a couple of months ago down in Columbia, and everybody was talking about the Black River. And so everybody's excited about it. The state has the money to spend on this, and I think it will be a priority going forward. So I'm looking at least 2 years.
And our trip was a kind of a wilderness experience, which I really enjoy that kind of thing rather than having campgrounds and cabins to stay at. But we stayed on a lot of sandbars, and one thing that I thought was remarkable is that late May, I only put on bug spray that first day while we were launching our boat. Never used it the rest of the 4 days on a trip. I couldn't believe the bugs were not just a lot worse than they were.
Right. Yeah, I paddled it early March, when we first went down there, and it was 8 foot above flood stage. And and then I did another trip in May in the summer of last year. Rudy Minke and myself and a guy from American Rivers, and Lewis, we went down on a trip down, and that was really special as well. And so again, the bugs weren't too bad. Rudy, he loved the dragonflies, and I loved the Hymenocallis crassifolia. So
Yeah.
our little spider lily is a different species than Rocky Shoals, but it was beautiful to see. And but the experience is sometimes getting off the river up in the Green Creek, and all these little tributary creeks that are just wonderful. And you can spend days just doing those creeks, and not, and I did spend days interacting with those creeks and meeting local people there that was fishing from the bank and talking to them and telling them what we was doing. And, again, everywhere we went, people were so receptive and so appreciative of what we were trying to do for the most part. And so again, it was just quite an experience. But I'm glad you got to go down it, Dan, and experience. And I highly recommend it to anybody to go down and experience that river. I hope that our parks applications here don't do any harm the resource. And again, part of our design criteria was to make sure we land softly, and the state park was fully embraced that stewardship approach to this. That was key, a catalyst from the start, to be a good steward first, and tell the story. And so I think that's where we all are. So.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. That was excellent to see your pictures and your story on the Black River tonight.
Thank you. Thank
Really
you.
looking forward to what's going to happen and sharing that with more people. Now, that is a hidden treasure in our state for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'll be giving a similar presentation to this one next week at the state annual meeting, but I'm going to add a lot more about the Native American tribes. The PD tribe is coming to our annual meeting, and just FYI, the Native Plant Society, we are engaging with the the PD tribe next week. We're going to their reservation, and we're going to start reteaching them back their native plant history and culture. And so this is going to be an ongoing thing for the Native Plant Society. And so I just hope that and understand that the Native Plant Society all should be very, very proud of this. And I hope that's true. I think it is. And so because again, my connection with our society, and it was just a great honor to do this tonight for everybody and give you just a small glimpse into the window of what we discovered down there. And it's just true treasure. And again, thank you all for having me.
Okay, good night, everybody.